Hello, I'm going to try to explain how to do the in-text citations and the works cited page according to the MLA guidelines in the upcoming research paper. First, I always look at the works cited page on a research paper to see if the full information is given correctly. Here's an example of one. I'm going to put up these handouts regarding the in-text citations and the works cited page on the Brightspace website under Content under Online Week 2. But it's important for students to remember that they have to do two things with a research paper in regard to the MLA guidelines. Number one, the works cited page, which is at the end of the research paper. It's a list of all the places where you got your information, i.e. all your sources, typed up according to the MLA guidelines like this. This is done correctly. And the second thing students have to do is include in-text citations in the text itself, like on page 2 or 3 or 4, where you're citing a source on one of the sentences on page 2 or 3 or 4 or page 1. So two things they have to do, works cited page and the in-text citations, and they have to be typed up according to the MLA guidelines correctly. You can't just type them up any way you want. So this is how they look. This is typical. They're alphabetized by the author's last name: Berman, Cox, Curtin, Edmondson, Halimi. Then the title of the book is given next, or the article, that's in italics usually. New York is the city of publication, colon. The publishing house, W.W. Norton, is given next with a comma. The copyright date, publishing date, is the year 2000. This is in the net library on a website. It says web here, looked at on this date, 22 August 2009. Here is a book at the bottom. I think we have two books here. A printed book by Frank Thomas, that's his last name, Thomas, comma, Frank, period. Dark Age is the article he wrote inside this larger book, Commodify Your Dissent, edited by Frank Thomas and Matt Weiland, published in New York by W.W. Norton in 1957. This is an article that occurred on page 255 to 72. Inside this larger book, print is typed up at the end. We always italicize the larger title, i.e. the container title. The smaller title, the article inside the larger book, is in quotation marks. You can study these handouts on your own later on. Also, I advise students to please read the books or the chapters in the book on in-text citations and the works cited page using the MLA guidelines. I think you'll feel much better if you read those chapters and nail down the works cited page and these in-text citations. Also, your research paper is only 4 to 5 pages long. That means you only need to have one source per page usually. That's not too much. And you should have about 4 or 5 sources that you found either from the web, a database, a book, a magazine, newspaper, etc. So you don't have to do too many, not 10 or 12, just 4 or 5. Keep it short, but just make sure everything's typed up properly. I want to show you, this is the actual MLA guidebook by the Modern Language Association, published by them. The MLA, Modern Language Association, is a collection of scholars, and they figure out how to type up all these different sources. If you want to get this book, you can get it used for $3.78, but you don't have to, not required. But this book is kind of good because it explains how to type up every single in-text citation you'd ever imagine and any entry on the works cited page. It's also valuable to know because you don't have to remember how to type up all these things by yourself. Instead, you have to know where to look it up. Here's one place where you can look it up. Here is another place where you can look it up. It's called the Purdue Online Writing Lab, or OWL, Online Writing Lab, OWL, you can Google this, by Purdue University. It shows the MLA guidelines and sentences, grammar, all kinds of things. And I think you can even download your own formatting guide from here. Put that on your computer, take some time to look at that a little bit more thoroughly there. But this source, the Online Writing Lab at Purdue University, gives examples of all the different ways to cite a source on the Works Cited page and on the in-text citations. Now, this is one of my favorite handouts. It explains the two things you need for your research paper coming up. Number one, the in-text citations and the Works Cited page at the end of the paper. These have to be typed up according to the MLA guidelines, and they're actually pretty easy once you start doing them. The hard part is knowing how to type up a different source, like a tweet, a Facebook page post, a magazine article, a newspaper article, a dictionary entry, a quote from a book, a quote from a website. There are different places to get information from. You must cite all your sources properly. If you don't, that's called plagiarism. So you can get information from millions of different places. The hard part is knowing how to type up each different place, like a tweet from the president, a Facebook post, an encyclopedia. They all have to be typed up differently, and you don't have to remember how to do each one, but you do have to know where to look it up. You look up how they do it, and then you type it the way they do it there. Also, Google Scholar will do these Works Cited pages for you. They will cite the source and type it up, format it properly for you. That's Google Scholar. Also, the databases at the Malcolm X College Library will also cite the source for you. Just click the cite link, it'll format it for you. You copy and paste it on your Works Cited page, and you should be okay. This handout explains the hierarchy of what comes first, second, third, fourth, etc. Last name, comma, first name, title of the book, place of publication, publisher name, Houghton Mifflin, Putnam & Sons, Simon & Schuster, Alfred A. Knopf, whatever, the year of publication, the copyright, the medium of publication, print or web. So it's pretty good. If we look at one author, here's a book by Vladimir Nabokov. The title of the book is Lolita, published in New York City, New York, Putnam is the name of the publishing house, comma, 1955 is the date of copyright, and then print. So it's pretty easy. But let me explain this first. I'll read this quickly. In-text citations, number one. In-text citations in the paper briefly identify the sources used and enable readers to find them in the Works Cited list at the end of the paper. These parenthetical references should be kept as brief as possible. Use only the information needed, usually the author's last name and a page number at the end of the sentence and in parentheses, like this, Smith 48. If we look at this example down here, here's an example of a quote somebody has given the author of the research paper has quoted this person from a book by Smith on page 148. It reads, he continued, it was not known until the trial concluded and all the evidence was inside quotation marks. That comes from, this is the in-text citation. Smith is the author's last name on page 148. The in-text citation goes inside parentheses and the period goes at the end. That's how it's done. If you can't find the author's last name, let's say it's a website, for example, put the website here. Websites usually don't have page numbers. Also, whatever in your in-text citation has to match the Works Cited page at the end. Why? This is a brief, short pointer to the full information on the Works Cited page at the end. Okay? So the in-text citations are short and sweet, just enough information to point to the full information on the Works Cited page, and the word here, the author's last name or the title, must be the first word on the Works Cited page. For example, Nabokov is the first word on the left margin, not the title, Lolita, which is in the middle. So the first word must be given in the in-text citation always. You can cite different sources. Here's a movie, Woody Allen's Annie Hall, a song on a CD. So all this stuff has to be typed up differently. Here's a newspaper article without an author, Africa Day celebrated in Havana, in the Daily Telegraph. So if you don't have an author's last name, you put the title there instead, but everything must be alphabetized and neatly typed up, double spaced. And I think, again, this is one of the great resources for you, Purdue Online Writing Lab. We'll cover this more later. I'm going to put all these good handouts up on Brightspace, and we'll certainly talk about it later. When we come back from spring break, which is next week, by the way, all we're going to do in the class from now on in is the research paper. It's 4 to 5 pages long. You have to get sources from 4 to 5 different places, and you have to type them up properly. And that's it. Talk to you later.